And I'm joined by my colleague, Brianne Wada, who partners with me on Tech and Engineering Employer Relations, as well as two alumni who will be joining us today. Lazaro Herrera, Senior Mechanical Engineer at General Atomics, and Wanfong Wu, Quality Engineer at Abbott. How this session today will work is that I'll get started with sharing some Career Center resources and the importance of self-assessment. Brianne will jump into job search pro tips. Wanfong will discuss networking skills, and then we'll have Wanfong and Lazaro be available to answer any questions you might have. Next slide, please. During this time, the Career Center is here for you virtually. Normally, we're located on Library Walk across from the bookstore, but now we are available for expanded 30-minute virtual sessions, which you can find on Handshake. Some of the most popular topics include resume and cover letter reviews, job and internship search strategies, networking strategies, as well as graduate school preparation. Next slide. UC San Diego has identified 12 competencies to promote student success and development. The framework and definitions for these skills were created to align with the learning outcomes and competencies identified by the National Association of Colleges and Employers, or NACE, which surveyed employers and asked them which skills are most in demand. What do they really want to see from college graduates? The good news is that through research experiences and applied learning, you are already developing the following real-world skills, such as teamwork and collaboration, as well as critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Now, I want you to review the 12 competencies and ask yourself which ones are most needed for your future career plans. How are you developing them? Can you cite an example? And then these can serve as good interviewing answers in the future. Next slide. The Clifton Strengths Assessment is a personal development tool developed by Gallup Education, which provides an individual with their top 5 strengths. 34 different strength themes are divided into 4 domains: strategic thinking, relationship building, influencing, and executing. Your top 5 might include the achiever strength, which helps you get things done, woo to help you make connections with new people, or adaptability to help you go with the flow when life throws you curveballs. Now, why does this matter? Focusing on your strengths on a daily basis has been shown to have profound positive effects on your personal and professional well-being. Here are a few reasons why understanding your strengths can be helpful. Your life will flow. When you know what you do best and you put yourself in situations to express your innate talents on a daily basis, you will feel extremely engaged naturally. Another way to describe engagement is by being in the flow. People who experience flow are doing something with their skill level meets the challenge, and they are so engrossed in what they're doing that they even can lose track of time and self-consciousness. Second, you will make better career decisions. When you know your own strengths, you can make informed decisions about what to study, which career path to pursue, and which job offers to accept, because you're actively choosing to put yourself in a position where you will use your best skills. Get a career you love faster. 3, you'll have better interpersonal relationships. Similar to helping your supervisor know you better, sharing your strengths with your teammates and developing an understanding of theirs as well can have innumerous positive effects on your internship and ultimate career success. From conflict resolution to forming project teams with a balance of different strengths to building a strong, positive office culture, at the heart, knowing and communicating each other's strengths ultimately builds stronger relationships through empathic understanding. Go on and claim and name your strengths. And then once you take a career assessment, such as Clifton Strengths, you can put your top 5 in your email signature, or on your business cards or LinkedIn profile. I've also heard of many Fortune 500 companies that ask their employees to leave their strengths on their door. That is when we're in the office. Last, you will experience happiness and career well-being. Because knowing and using your strengths leads to engagement and better relationships at work, you will feel more satisfied and a sense of well-being doing something you love each day with people who truly get you. A successful career and happy personal life are facilitated by having hope for the future. Hope is best cultivated when you have a solid knowledge of your strengths and an onus of control over your own life. In short, when you know what you do best, you'll feel confident moving forward into that big, beautiful unknown out there. I hope these provide a few reasons why understanding your strengths can serve as an asset in your career. Now I'm happy to introduce Brianne Wada, Associate Director of Tech and Engineering Employer Engagement, who will discuss a few job search pro tips.
All right, thank you so much, Lee. And can't agree more with what was shared there. In vein of, keeping hope throughout this time, we are going to hear from two awesome alumni from UCSD's engineering program shortly, and I'm sure they're going to share more knowledge on this area. But some quick pro tips for you all as you all are job searching during this pandemic. A couple of pro tips here. Focus on developing related experience, right? So this is where those strengths that Lee was referencing comes into play. Think about what kind of projects can you engage on that are going to bolster those strengths, that are going to use those strengths to develop experience that employers are going to be looking at. And in engineering, the project section is a big area on your resume and also on your LinkedIn profiles that employers look at. And if you're, right now experiencing some hardship in finding a position, a really good tip for you to engage in right now is getting involved in some kind of project or getting involved in the industry and contributing in some sort of way, because it's going to give you really great interview answers when the job market starts to open up a little bit more. And employers, they want to see you involved in passion projects. They want to see how you're using your strengths. How did you help out the community at large? And so this is a great way for, again, you just to kind of bolster those. Some cool community organizations that are out there. There is Tech San Diego. They have their own job posting board, but in addition to that, they have podcasts that they lead. They actually talk to a lot of folks in industry, so I highly encourage you just to check that out. And then there's meetups, right? So there's actually meetups for all kinds of interests and skill sets. I know that there's a big kind of coder community in these meetups. There's a JavaScript meetup, there's a Ruby meetup, and I'm sure there's a ton of other engineering type of meetups. But in addition to that, there's also meetups that are more socially based too. So pick your passion point and go with it. And then this is also a great time to start pursuing research opportunities, because this is another way that you can start developing that related experience and getting yourself ready for that opportunity when it is going to open up. The other piece is, during this time, really start to remind yourself to stay flexible and exude grace upon yourself and others, right? Apply to positions that are going to create transferable skills. We're kind of in an uncharted territory at this point. And so your dream job may not, come out of school, out of the gates with it. You may not come out with that, but that's okay. You can build on your experiences and you can build up to that opportunity. So think about applying to positions that are going to provide those transferable skill sets so that it can, again, set you up for that opportunity. And at this point too, if you are applying and you're kind of, out there thinking, hello, did I fall into the dark hole of the internet? Just remind yourself that sometimes right now people are caring for their children. They're trying to figure out what the budgets are going to be like at their organization. They might be caring for someone that's ill in their family. And so there's a lot going on right now. And so that's the exuding grace onto others piece that we were talking about earlier, where you just don't know what's going on in people's lives. So sometimes a gentle follow-up is really great to happen here, but also really also reminding you to exude grace on yourself, because it's not always a personal vendetta, right, against you. It's just kind of the times that we're in. So kind of keeping all that in mind as we're moving forward here, but really looking forward to hearing from our alumni panelists on their suggestions. And it's my pleasure to introduce right now Wang Feng Wu to this webinar. And Wang Feng, if you can give just a kind of brief introduction about yourself for our attendees, and then jump right into your networking slides.
Absolutely. Can everyone hear me right now? Perfect. So hello, everyone. I'm Wanfeng Wu. I'm from the Revel class of 17. Actually, I have my shirt right here. Go Revel. Hardest college ever. I'll make that statement on the record. So I studied mechanical engineering at UCSD, and I went off to Dartmouth to study engineering management for my master's, because at the time I was thinking, should I go straight into a technical role, or maybe do something more business related, or perhaps be somewhere in the middle. But now I'm an engineer at Abbott, quality engineer, so back on the technical side. And also on the side, I'm a consultant for international students where I help them land them like jobs in STEM. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I'm going to share my screen right here to show you the slides I've prepared. Okay, let's give this a try. Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. So we went over this on who I am, but let me back up a little bit. So when it comes to applying for jobs, I think what Brianne said about finding some project to work on during this time while you're looking for jobs, or something new to learn now, that for those of you who are graduating, I think that's really important, because in my most recent role, one of the interview questions that the director asked me is, so it's been 6 months since you graduated. What did you spend that time on, besides applying for jobs? So employees or employers are looking for, what you like to do, like the type of initiative you take in your free time, especially when it comes to these entry-level roles. But what I would like to add to the tips that Brianne mentioned is, how do you rely on the UCSD alumni base to help you with recruiting? Because I think a lot of people send application after application. And when there's another way where you can reach out to alums to learn more about the role, so you come more prepared when you're sending out those applications and for preparing your interview answers. But at the same time, you can have them refer you straight to the hiring team. So you skip the line where you're being filtered by HR. And I'm going to tell you how to do that in this talk, along with giving you all the scripts to use so you can ask for that referral. But before I begin, I want to highlight a story which I think highlights two key principles of networking. So this was back in grad school. We were having a discussion about how amazed we were by the generosity of alums in helping us with recruiting. So one of my MBA classmates, he had an interview with General Mills. And for him, he always has trouble with this specific type of interviews. So what he did was he sent a message to an alum asking for 20 minutes of her time to give him tips on how can he, respond to these type of interview questions. Now, before this message, he and that alum had never met. There was no contact. And she was a senior manager or perhaps even VP at the company. Her reply to him was, unfortunately, I'm busy on the weekdays, but why don't you suggest some time on Saturday? So he does that. And to his surprise, and mine when I heard the story, was the alum replied back with, great, since I'm helping you, let's make sure we do this right. And she basically gives him 3 hours of her time on Saturday morning, walking him through the interview process, coaching him on his answers, and giving him a mock interview. Of course, he aces the interview and gets the offer. But I want to highlight, and I was of course mind blown when I heard about this the first time. But I want to highlight 2 principles here. One is generosity, because networking is it comes from a place of generosity, and it's about helping each other out. And number 2, I want to highlight how big of a competitive edge he got from those 2 hours with the alum versus spending maybe 2 hours on Google looking for ways to improve his recruiting chances or more information about the company. Now, not every alum will have 3 hours of free time or intimate knowledge of the interview process, but each alum can easily send your application straight to the hiring team. Because the battlefield we're trying to avoid here is competing with 800 plus other applicants for entry-level roles when you're for maybe a 10-second glance of the HR person's time. Instead, I want all of you to be able to connect with the alum inside the company and then have that person refer your application straight to the hiring manager. And possibly with even a comment saying, this person is an excellent candidate because A, B, and C. And I'm going to tell you how to do that. But before we get into it, I think a lot of students have a hard time understanding what does networking look like. So in many cases, if you're networking in person, it's just like in this picture, one person asking another person for advice over coffee. And here are a couple of examples, real life examples. So example 1, you ask for a 20-minute call with an alum to learn more about the company and the role. And that usually leads to a referral. One of my recent clients, she's applying to Harvard Business School. So she reached out to an alum who went on to graduate from Harvard Business School for advice on the application process. And that alum reviewed her personal statement and gave her great feedback. And one thing I did is you can always ask a top classmate for a 20-minute coffee to learn more about their time management strategies. Now, before we go into like the step-by-step process of what to do, you need to understand kind of the theory. Otherwise, your interactions may sound robotic or even transactional, which we want to avoid. And networking is definitely not supposed to feel transactional. So networking comes from a place of generosity. In the US, at least, I don't really know how networking cultures occur in other countries, but the US networking culture is about helping each other out. When you're seeking advice from other people, you're also actively keeping an open mind on what difficulties they have with maybe your mutual interest or goals. And if you know the resources that can help them out, you offer it freely. You're not really keeping tabs on how many times has that person helped me or how many times have I helped that person out. It's not supposed to be transactional. And it's a community of people who believe in passing the help forward, because in any organization, you don't get to a senior role without receiving help along the way. And it's part of their responsibility to pass that information and knowledge on to the next generation. And when it comes to who do you reach out to, because people are busy, most people are inclined to help those with whom they share some affiliation, which is usually the same company or maybe the same school, unless you're introduced to that person by a mutual friend or a connection. And I think many students, and me starting out, and some of my clients have a hard time visualizing what is this networking relationship. It's pretty abstract. So you're definitely not hanging out when you're having like a networking coffee with an alum or another individual, a colleague. The closest example is it's like a good relationship with a professor. So when you have a networking call with an alum, it's very much like a one-on-one session asking your professor for maybe advice on grad school. You're doing it over coffee or at the professor's office. So the first 3 to 5 minutes is small talk. And then the rest of it, it's business. You're asking questions about grad school and listening for the advice the professor gives. The difference is that for networking, to keep the relationship warm, after a couple weeks or a couple months, you interact with that person to maintain the relationship. And I'll talk more about that later on. And one other thing to note is although the networking relationship starts out formally, it can always lead to friendship. So that's all the time I have for the theory. And now let's get into the step-by-step so you can network tonight. There are 4 steps. 1, you send a respectful message. 2, you prepare good questions. 3, you have the meeting with the alum, which naturally leads to a referral. And 4, you send a specific thank you. You never, ever ask if they can give you a job. That's the fastest way to sink your ship. So don't do that. Now, step 1, you go to LinkedIn and you filter people by your target company and those who attended UCSD. And finally, the roles that you're targeting or similar roles, if possible. From this list of alums, you see if any of them are on Handshake or Try and Connect, because those alums have already indicated they're willing to help you out, so they will respond much faster. Once you've decided who to reach out to, you send them this message. So take a minute to read this, and then I'm going to talk about it. Okay, so there are 3 psychology tricks here. In the subject, UCSD 17, you want to show your affiliation to that person so that they don't delete the email, so that they actually open your email. And then again, fellow Triton, because common ground builds relationships. The next part in green, when someone receives a message from a stranger, 3 things are going on in their mind. Who are you? How did you get my contact? And what do you want? So the sooner you answer those 3 questions, the sooner you put them at ease. And I would like to note that how specific I am and what do I want. At the time, I genuinely was interested in a technical versus more business role. I noticed that she came from an engineering background, but is now working in marketing. And in light blue, whenever, this is a life trick, whenever you're messaging a busy person or someone who are more important than you, like your boss, ideally, you want to characterize your email such that all the busy person has to do is reply with a yes or a no. Here in this case, all the alum has to do is open up their calendars to Friday, 4:30 p.m. If they're free, they reply yes. Because the more thinking they have to do, the more tiring it is, and they're likely to procrastinate and then never reply to you. And if you're doing much of the thinking upfront for your bosses, that's how you stand out from being just an average employee. This is the 300-character version, which I don't have time to go to, but reach out to Lee or myself afterwards, and I'll send you the scripts. And here are some of the responses you can get from Qualcomm and Chewy that I've had. Next step, once you've scheduled a call with the alum, you begin preparing questions. So you want to spend 30 minutes researching the company and the role, because you want to show respect to the alum by asking them questions that are not answerable by just a 5-minute Google search. And when you show that you're prepared and you did your research, that leaves a very good impression and makes them happy to refer you. For a 20-minute call, that's about 3 to 5 questions. But I prepare about 7 because most of the times these calls end up going to 45, 50 minutes. Very important item, you're talking for not more than 30% of the time because your job here is to learn and let them give you advice. The more you talk, the less you learn. As you're preparing these questions, you're trying to answer 2 things. So you're trying to find out more information about the position, like what it involves, and what life is like at the company to determine 2 things. 1, if you like the position. and 2, if you qualify. Assuming you already know what career path you want to go on, if you're still trying to figure that out, feel free to ask them about their industry and career path. Here are some example questions, and just spend a minute reading them. So 2 things. Notice the context I'm giving, that they either show good qualities about myself, my ambition, for the first question, and for number 2, the amount of research I did. Whenever possible, you want your questions to, you want to do something similar for your questions. After you've decided your questions, spend 5 minutes on deciding your small talk topic. If in all interactions, it's very important to spend the first few minutes on small talk. Otherwise, it's very robotic. And it's always safe to talk about the changes at UCSD. Sun God, how safe it's been, and how very, yes, I'll just say how very safe it's been recently versus earlier Sun Gods. I also recommend 5 minutes checking their social media to see if there are any common interests. Maybe they went to the same, they're part of the same sorority as you, or the same hip hop club, which you can casually bring up in small talk. Again, common ground builds relationships. So out of all of this, you have your cheat sheet, where for me, the first section is the alum and brief details about the alum to jog my memory during the call. And then the small talk topic. Finally, the third section is the list of questions, which I read from during the call. After you've done all of this, you're now ready for the call or the coffee. If you're meeting in person, it's totally okay to bring a journal to take notes, or even a laptop if you're at, let's say, cafe. Now, a lot of students and my classmates, especially international students, have difficulty with small talk because it's scary, and they don't really know what goes on in small talk. So this is an example of what that looks like. Many cases, the alum calls you. So your phone will go ring, 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 and I'll answer. I say, thank you for calling. This is Wanfang. And then Jane will be like, hi, Wanfang. This is Jane. How are you today? I'm like, oh, I'm doing great. How about yourself? And she says, oh, I'm good. And I follow up with, oh, I'm glad to hear that. How is life in Boston after graduation? And she goes, oh, yeah, it's nice work. It's nice here. I've been here for 2 years. The city's great compared to whatever aspects of La Jolla. And then I say, oh, I'm glad to hear that. So this part, I did my research. I noticed she and I were part of the same dance club. So I say, oh, so then I follow up with, do you happen to know what the hip hop studios are like over there? Because I'm part of Fusha, and I'd like to continue doing hip hop wherever I end up after graduation. And she may say something like, actually, this is what she says. She said, oh, the studios here are great, but I'm actually too busy to do hip hop now. But that's so cool. I was also at Fush during my time there, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I didn't prepare this, I'll go and mention updates at UCSD. So I'll say something like, hey, I'm glad that you're enjoying Boston. Here at UCSD, there's been some changes. Sun God no longer happens. Our Sun God now occurs earlier in the day on Sunday afternoons or Saturday afternoons. And it's very safe now, blah, blah, blah. And then she'll say something like, oh, wow, that's quite different when I was there. We had these great artists, blah, blah, blah. So after about 3-4 minutes of that, you segue to your questions by then saying something like this. Anyways, I'm so glad that you managed to hop on the phone with me today. I'd love to ask you some questions about iRobot and your role there, to which she responds with, yeah, sure, go ahead. So that's an example of small talk can look like. Now, this is very important. While you're in the call, you only ask for 20 minutes of their time. So keep track of the time. And at 20 minutes, you say, I want to respect your time. I noticed that we are at the 20-minute mark. I have a few more questions I'd love to ask you if you can spare 5 more minutes. But I want to respect your time, and I'm always happy to send them over email. Now, unless the alum has a meeting right afterwards, most likely they'll say, yeah, sure, I have until the hour. So it goes on to 45 minutes. And towards the end of the call, if it goes well, you go for the referral. You can use that direct or indirect method. For the indirect method, you say something like this, I'm very interested in blah, blah, blah role. I want to make sure my application is absolutely perfect before I send it off. can you take a look at my resume and make sure it's okay? In many cases, if you ask good questions and the call went well, the alum will be like, yeah, sure, I'll send you my referral link, blah, blah, blah. If they don't do that, you can then follow up with the direct method or just go straight into the direct method, which is what I do nowadays when I was applying recruiting about a year ago. So at the end of the call, you say, at the risk of sounding too forward, Qualcomm is a very prestigious company. Each opening receives hundreds of applications. And after doing this much research and speaking to several alums, my biggest fear is that it's going to slip through the cracks. Can I send you my resume? And if you think it passes Qualcomm standards, pass it along to the hiring team. So you give them an out, only if your resume passes Qualcomm standards. So that's the call. After the call is also a very important step. This is where most people, if they do network, they don't do so well. It's crucial that you send them a thank you note the same day, preferably, definitely no later than the next day. For some reason, people don't send thank yous. And when you don't send a thank you, as an alum, I feel like I was just being used for my advice, like a vending machine. So send a thank you. And it should be specific in the sense that you'll say something like this: my biggest takeaway was A, B, and C. You want to be that specific with your thank yous. And then to keep the relationship warm, if you end up taking their advice, update them on the results. Because many people give advice, few people take the advice, even fewer people update the advice giver. So as an advice giver, I get sad. I'm thinking, is my time being well used here? So just because everyone else sucks at, closing the loop with the alum, you stand out a lot by sending something like this, giving them an update on the advice you took. And also, when you've managed to find your job, send all of the alums an update. And what I like to do is, during the holidays, send them, wish them the happy holidays, and also give them a brief update where I am professionally. And at the end of the year, of all of the articles I read from, HBR, MIT Tech Review, all of the useful or interesting ones, the ones that I think that apply to the alums or the people I've networked with, I send them that article with a little note saying, hey, I think you'll find this useful because of A, B, and C, and also asking how they are. And as you do all of this, you're keeping track of all your interactions in, let's say, Excel sheet, so that you know your previous interaction history with the many alums when you interact with them again. So that's everything I can share in a 20-minute talk. Feel free to reach out to me for the scripts. I'm also volunteering 30 minutes of my time every week to help with, let's say, feedback on resumes or any other advice you would like. You can set up a meeting with me using the HubSpot link, or just send me an email. But I hope you found that helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Wanfeng. I really enjoyed your talk, and I think that these are amazing networking strategies. So students, we're going to be opening it up to a Q&A in just a few minutes. So I'm giving you a heads up to start thinking about some questions to ask. In the meantime, I want to thank Lazaro and Wanfeng for joining us today. And Lazaro, would you mind telling us a little bit about your background and experience?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, fantastic. So my name is Lázaro Herrera. I graduated back in 2000 from Warren College at UCSD, Jacobs School of Engineering. While at UCSD, I worked at the structural engineering department for my undergrad years there, and I did manage to do networking with professors. And I also belong to an organization, student-run, student-led, called the SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. Some of you might have already heard of it. So one of the things that I would advise you, if you are not already in either a fraternity, sorority, to join a student organization that is geared towards your major career choice and or that it is focused on networking. You can also reach out to the Career Center and make those networking efforts through that medium as well. My background, when I was at UCSD, I unfortunately did not take advantage of doing a formal internship. I didn't really know how and didn't really know where to go, so I missed out on that opportunity. So I encourage you, young individuals, to go ahead and seek out the advice that Wang Fang mentioned to you, to reach out to the alumni to see how you can obtain internships. Some of them, most of them will be paid. Some of them will not be paid, and you can definitely go ahead and make sure that you accommodate and be flexible to whatever you can obtain. And with that being said, I managed to go ahead and enter the industry workforce with Solar Turbines, who has been around for over 100 years now, and they are based here locally in San Diego. I worked off of the Kearney Mesa plant. My focus was dealing with the turbine air inlet system and the exhaust. When I applied, this is before we actually had LinkedIn, before we actually had a lot of the ATS, automated tracking systems. So when you picked up the telephone or you actually emailed a real person. So my resume would directly go to a real recruiter. For the most part, they would pile them up, or they would send it to a local centralized email address. So I was very diligent in trying to obtain the person's business card whenever I went to a career fair. So I managed to go ahead and grab a couple of the Solar Turbine individual recruiters' business cards, and I started networking with them, sending them questions as far as how life was, culture like at Solar Turbines, what they were essentially looking for in a recent graduate. So I started to build a rapport with one of them, and we essentially did become friends to a certain extent, as Wang Fang mentioned, that if you follow up with a person networking that way, you take an interest, and it's not a robotic relationship. It's more of a human touch. And finally, I sent them my resume, and I said, I'm looking for an entering position, and they gave me an opportunity. It was not necessarily with the sign, because I was looking for the sign position. They told me, you can enter as a drafter. And I said, sure, yeah, I'll take the opportunity. And I prepared. I was very professional, put on the tie suit. I had a portfolio with documentation that I had, work projects that I had from UCSD. I went to the interview. I answered all the questions that the individuals at the panel had. This was a panel. And so for some of you, you might know the STAR system method. If you don't know, it's situation, action, task, and result. So that's what the STAR method stands. So situation, you explain what the situation is pertinent to the question. How did you deal with somebody in a certain situation? Then you talk about the task. Then you talk about the action that you actually took to come up with that result. And then you tell them how the result ended up being. Was it positive, negative? You always try to come up with a positive connotation to the response of that solution. And then after the interview, normally right about when it starts ending, they normally tell you, do you have any questions for us? And that's I want you to see this as a date. Assume that you're going out with a wonderful young man, with a wonderful young lady, and you're having a great time, but afterwards, it just kind of ends in a cold nothing. And you're expecting some sort of feedback and response, or them to show some sort of interest. So obviously, when they ask you a question, you must have a couple prepared canned questions, just in case you are nervous and cannot think about anything on the spot. But during the interview, you will definitely get to know the individuals, and you can ask questions about, okay, I see that this department focuses on this process. Can you explain to me a little more about what the process is? Or you can come up with any type of questions, but please do ask them questions. At the end of the interview, what I tend to do is I ask them, and this is kind of turning the table back on them. Is there anything that you see from what you've heard that might not allow me to, obtain a possible offer from this interview? Now, that's a little bit risky sometimes, but at the same time, you're asking for immediate feedback. So when they hear that question, they will definitely say, we are looking for somebody that does X and Y and Z, and, that's kind of what we're shooting for. But if they say something along those lines, then you can have a rebuttal at that point, and that's essentially at the interview end of the session. So, I was there for 17 years. And it was a wonderful time. And then I decided to move over to the county of San Diego. And this is where I was really flexible because I acquired techniques by the job where I learned how to use a sound level meter. And with the sound level meter knowledge, I was able to move over to the county of San Diego doing sound level meter assessments and report writing. I was there for about 2 years. And then I moved over to General Atomics, where I am currently present. And at General Atomics, I was able to move over here because of the networking and the organization that I belong to, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. You do network a lot with other individuals that are in various positions, and you can find out if there's a job and they can refer you. So internal referrals do pay dividends higher than doing a direct online application. And doing the networking definitely pays out. So I encourage you to follow what Wang Feng says. And I do encourage you guys to go ahead and follow the 4 steps, which is one of them. The main one is giving thanks back to the individual that actually gave you some advice, because as Wang Feng said, sometimes we provide advice and we never hear back from those individuals, and you do feel a little bit in the dark because you don't know whether that individual actually used the advice, was it beneficial to them. And if we get feedback, we can definitely refine it and fine tune it and maybe know that, okay, this is really, really working for those individuals. So thank you for listening to a brief synopsis of my story. If you have any questions, I definitely appreciate the opportunity here to share this with you, and I'm free to answer any questions that you like.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed what you mentioned about the STAR method and coming up with situations and showing results, that storytelling, and then following up. And so I think that's just fantastic. If an alumnus you speak with provides really valuable advice and you use it and it ends up helping you get a job or move you along in your career, writing back to that alumnus and sharing, I think that is a really, really nice touch. So at this point, I'd like to open it up to student questions. And so we have a Q&A chat here. Students, please feel free to leave your questions. If there's some, okay, so we have a question right now. Would you say networking groups are still helpful past undergrad? This student is about to graduate this quarter and has not joined any networking groups at UC San Diego.
If I may take that and answer, the short answer is yes. But it also depends on what you have to offer. So think about it this way. It should be a win-win relationship. And maybe you think you don't have anything to offer at the moment, and don't think about it like that, because the alumni, as Wang Feng mentioned, are interested in finding out what's going on at UCSD, but along those lines, what other technology is being used. So that's kind of like a gateway to get in and start networking with individuals. But at the same time, think about social media. if you connect with an alumni or any individuals in the networking environment that are not really active in social media, you can be a gateway and a liaison to say, hey, you know, let's have a 20-minute conversation. I see that your LinkedIn profile is not really up to date. Maybe I can share some insights as to how I can go ahead and help you. And that's a service that you can definitely provide. Maybe not make it sound like, okay, your LinkedIn account's not extremely excellent, but, you know, say, you know, I've learned a couple of tips and tricks. I went to a webinar and I want to share with you something that I learned. That's giving back to the individual with the advice that they gave you. So that's a currency for their time spent with you. So I think that networking is still a very valuable thing, and it will never go away. So I suggest that you go to the Meetup social media, and start looking for things that you might find of interest, like coding if you're interested in coding, or hiking if you're interested in hiking. But make sure that you make an effort to find a network group that actually helps you with whatever your focus is. If you're interested in mechanical engineering, there's the ASME, or there's SWE for Society of Women Engineers, or there's SHIP for Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. And sometimes most of these groups are open to embrace anybody that goes there, regardless of whether the connotation says. Obviously, they're going to be geared towards a certain specific group, but they will not shine your way. So reach out to those groups and make sure that you join some of those organizations that are professional. And LinkedIn, you know, once again, do filter through the UCSD alumni to see if you can connect with them. And maybe if you send 40 invitations with a little short note, maybe 10 will respond, but at least you have 10 new individuals that you can pick their brains for any type of question in any industry that you're targeting. So hope that answers some of the question.
Absolutely agree. I think it's an amazing resource that we have, LinkedIn, and there's so many individuals that you can connect with this way. So I want to open this question up for Wanfeng. How have you noticed, has hiring changed, or has the workforce changed since, you know, COVID-19 started?
So I know that for my company, there is a hiring freeze. I always think of hiring freezes with quotation marks, because I feel like every company, unless they're facing extreme pressures, there will be teams looking for top performers. So in my company, we have, for the vascular division, we have a freeze. I know my friend who works for Thermo Fisher, there were temporary pay cuts. But I also know I've heard from through the grapevine, through my network, that there are other companies hiring. We're talking about like the big consulting companies. We're talking about like Amazon. They're still hiring. And so in terms of recruiting, I'd say it's kind of, you have some companies that aren't, and you have others who are doing pretty well, or not so impacted by this quarantine. And I imagine they will still be open to internships and jobs.
So both of the alumni we have on our panel today are mechanical engineering grads. And so, you know, are there any advice for new graduates who want their resumes to stand out?
So I guess my quick answer for that would be definitely, if you definitely do the networking method, try to get your application in front of the recruiter, the hiring manager. But another thing you can do is ask your friend to spend only 10 seconds reading your resume, because a lot of times the recruiter, that's how much time they'll spend reading their resume, and ask them what their takeaway is. And if that takeaway message is what you had in mind when you're crafting your resume, perhaps you're trying to make your resume say that, you know, you're the engineering student with knowledge in business because you did your business minor, and therefore you can be like a bridge between the two groups. If they're not getting that message, then that means you need to refine it.
Lazaro, any thoughts?
So I do agree with that. You know, giving it to an individual, a friend of yours, to read it for about 10 seconds, spend about a minute if at the most, and highlight what they see. That's kind of an ATS test that you want to filter through if you're essentially a recruiter. The other thing is the networking portion. I think is key. To highlight your resume in quotation marks is to give it to network with an individual who can do that referral internally for you. When they do the referral, that means that you can send them an email with your resume, and they can physically or virtually with the internal email send it to the hiring manager, and that way the hiring manager can make the ultimate decision bypassing kind of the ATS system, and the hiring manager can say, hey, to the human resources group, I would like to have this individual be brought in for an interview, regardless of what the human resources department thinks. At that point, you know, the hiring manager has the final say on that. So if you can definitely network and get individuals to vouch for you to do internal referrals, that'll get you much further 90% of the time than if you actually apply online. Not saying, also along those lines, if you apply online, try to limit the amount of applications within a company, because the system blocks you or automatically puts you on a black list after X amount of applications that go in there. So.
Oh, another tip I just remember for the resumes that I've reviewed recently, I think a common thing is I've noticed two patterns. One, white space. So white space is potential to make yourself sound even better, or to make that bullet point better, to further highlight why it's important or why you excelled here. So if you ever see a lot of white space, then try to fill it in with more details of why what you did was important. Another thing is many of the resumes I read, I noticed they miss the opportunity to highlight the so what. Like they're lost in details. Oh, I did this engineering thing using this specific, I don't know, code or methodology or tool. But I'm not seeing the big picture of like, why was your contribution here important to the overall project or end results? So that's something to consider. Always ask yourself, what is the so what here? And make it and spell it out for them. Don't have them connect the dots, the reader, connect the dots for them by explicitly telling them, and this resulted in whatever important thing that happened.
Yes, showing results. I think that's really important. So we have a question about getting promoted. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of students who are exercising flexibility and adaptability in terms of considering other roles that they may not have considered before. Lazaro, how long did you work in that first position you had before getting promoted? And do you have any advice for students who might work in a slightly different position in the hopes of transitioning later?
Right. So I started as a drafter, and about 6 months later, I was promoted to a designer. And how did I achieve that? Well, as a drafter, I was very vigilant in making sure that every process that the drafters had to follow was followed. But I also followed with the leads and started networking internally with other individuals, managers, and I shared my experience with them. I also offered to help and volunteer to any project within staff meetings that were being offered, and or if there was a project that was hot, I would go ahead and say, hey, you know, I have a couple hours that I can spare a week, managing that with my supervisor, immediate supervisor, and the manager that needed the support. So making yourself accessible is a key way to actually get noticed and being promoted in a faster time frame. That's essentially the way to work within the organization.
That's something I hear all the time from hiring managers and employers, is that they really love to hire students who show initiative and are open to learning new things.
Right. That is correct. And don't feel ashamed, because not everybody knows everything. So as an incoming employee, you're learning. So if you ask questions, that will definitely show initiative and a desire to learn. So go ahead and ask questions, regardless of how not really smart you might think they might sound. Just ask the question. The worst question is the question that is never asked. So go ahead and ask those questions.
Okay, we have one more question about referrals. So, I think there's a lot of students who aren't quite sure what their next career step might be. And so how should they ask for a referral if they're not really decided on the type of role that they might be applying to?
I was just about to type that up. So it sounds like in that case, they're still in the research phase and they're just reaching out to alums to learn more about different career trajectories or about roles for which they have interest in. So I'd say at that time, you probably won't ask for a referral because you're still researching, but you will keep the relationship warm. And then maybe 3 months later, that company has that opening that you're interested in. Then you can circle back to the alum and ask them, hey, thank you, you of course, you update them on the research you've done, and you'd be like, hey, after talking to you and all the other alums, I think maybe, I don't know, a manufacturing process engineer is the role I would like to, the career path I would like to start in. And I noticed there's this opening at your company, and I'm wondering if you can give me any advice on what that department or that role is like, if we can have, let's say, a 20-minute call, something like that. And so if you've kept your relationship warm, they'll be more than happy to hop back onto a call with you. And at the end of the call, you can ask for the referral. They might even just immediately respond with, yeah, sure. And here, you can just use my referral link, which has happened to me and my classmates.
So from my point, to answer to that question would be, well, and I had this conversation more or less with 2 or 3 people already over the last couple of weeks. One young lady, she's working at Edison. She just recently got hired there, independent of the COVID-19 pandemic that's going on. But she managed to get hired there, and she wants to see if there's other opportunities. And I was asking her, well, you need to figure out what you really want. So you need to sit down and write down your goals and your vision as to where you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years. Maybe that's a little hard right now. So, do a collage of pictures of what you really want to achieve in your life. And as you start going through this process, your brain starts seeing what you truly want. By saying this, I'm getting to the referral part, because if you ask for a referral for a position that you think you really want, and maybe you don't really want it, you're essentially asking a person to vouch for you. And if you decide to not stick with that position for more than a year or 2, then that person's going to look at you and might not refer you again. So I want you to make sure that you have an alignment of your personal core values as to what you really want to achieve. And once you know that, you share that with the individual before you ask for that referral. You can say, I see myself doing this. This is the position that I want. This is why I want it. And give them substantial reasons for why you're interested in this position. Show that you have done the research and show that you have meditated on this request before you actually request this. Because once they give you that referral, then they're putting their name on the docket for you to go that way. So when should you actually ask for the referral? I think that once you provide substantial information for those individuals that you're reaching out, and the relationship, if you do a 20-minute call, should you ask for the referral at the end? That to me, it's a little too fast, but I would say if you could set up a call to follow up about a month later and build that relationship, that shows the individual that you're networking with that you are actually committed to this, and that you really want to move forward, and that you're taking their advice, and that you're scheduling time for them to actually talk to you so that you can make that connection at a personal level. So once you build that relationship, at least I would say at the second call, you can definitely mention if you want to, if they can do a referral for you. I had a young individual ask me today, you know, he works at General Atomics, but he's thinking about moving positions, and I asked him, well, what exactly do you see yourself doing ultimately in about 5 years? He mentioned he wants to work for NASA, JPL, and I said, okay, well, that's a good step. At least I know where you're going, and I can kind of guide you as to how to follow through. I know some people at JPL, so I can connect him with those individuals, but that's essentially how networking goes. And if you tell your network individual the plans that you're thinking about, the long-term goal, vision that you have, it'll definitely help them a little more as to how they can guide you and provide support. I'm sorry for the long-winded response. I hope that answers the question.
I think there's something really powerful about setting an intention and exploring those passions. And I so appreciate our alumni panelists for being here today, for Brianne and for Alejandra for being here today as well. And unfortunately, our time is up. It's a little past 1 o'clock, and I know there's a holiday weekend coming up, but I really enjoyed being here, and I hope you learned a lot from this session as well.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you so much for the other panelists. I definitely appreciate and enjoy this conversation and discussion. Thank you so much.
And as a reminder, this presentation was recorded and will be uploaded to the Idea Engineering Student Center's YouTube channel.
All right, thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to give this talk and also to hear your answers, Lazaro, from someone who has more years of experience in engineering, to see how it works upstream in the professional world. And I hope that everyone found the advice in the talk helpful.
Thank you, Wang Feng. Thank you for those kind words, and I definitely do appreciate the presentation that you put together. I think those pieces of advice do shine light and are really good guidelines to follow for brand new professionals that are coming out and emerging. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you both so much. And Lee, too. Alejandra.